If you're one of the 9 out of 10 people who doesn't believe that an organization can have a culture of care where people actually care about you and the organization be successful, if that's you, join me with my next guest, Graeme Cowan, 5-time author, co-founder of Are You OK, also co-founder of We Care 365 and the host of the Caring CEO podcast. Join me next with Graeme, find out how that's all doable. Let's go.
Hi folks, welcome to the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast by Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. In this podcast, Gary shares everything about servant leadership, service leadership, authentic leadership, how to create high performance cultures, service excellence and life balance. Here's your host, Gary Ryan.
Thank you, Sienna, for your lovely introduction. We always appreciate your work for us. Folks, as you've already heard, I'm here with Graeme Cowan. This is an absolute delight for me. Graeme and I were just talking before the show about how we connected early in 2020, but we've never actually had a conversation before. So it's an absolute delight to have you with us, Graeme.
Pleasure to join you, Gary.
And your message, which is fortunately getting in the media quite a bit, I'm pleased that you've got some time for us, because I know with your media commitments that are very strong, being all the shows that you're on these days, which is so important to get the message out there, your podcast commitments, which is just an incredible podcast, which we'll talk about later with folks as well. And certainly with We Care 365, your own organisation where you're out there working closely with organisations and helping them create a culture of care. I'm really delighted that you've got some time to spend with us today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our chat.
And you mentioned in your material that 9 out of 10 employees do not believe that their organisation really cares about them. You want to tell us a little bit about that and maybe some practical things that organisational leaders can do to really flip that around?
Yeah, I think the exact number is sort of like, 13% are really actively engaged. And what that means is that, they're all in. There's discretionary effort, they're passionate, they produce great results. And there's always a lot of speculation by Gallup and others about, why the results aren't higher than that. And often it's around, not having clear expectations of, or clear understanding of what their results are supposed to be. Also, not tapping into the purpose of the organisation, and purpose can be a very, very big motivator. And I think also being in a competitive environment where it's sort of win-lose, where, people either win in the organisation or lose, rather than think about, the strength of collaborating, the benefits of collaborating. And it's always a journey, but, having what I call a We Care culture, which is where we strive for a culture of care and high performance, I think it's got to be the nirvana of any organisation, whether it's not-for-profit, government, or, private organisation. It has to be the quest.
And a lot of people don't believe that the two can coexist, that you can have this culture of care, and if you're a private organisation, that you can have those commercial outcomes, or if you're a not-for-profit or a government agency, that you can get your performance outcomes that you're after. They don't believe that these two can coexist, and yet you are working with organisations where you're proving, and leaders are proving, they can coexist. And in fact, I've just come from an organisation today called Eric Jones Stair Building, and one of the things we were doing with the leaders, which are effectively the foremen on the floor, on the factory floor, who build the stairs and send them out for the installers to install. And we were looking back to 2023 about, what are you most proud of? And they had a really crazy high demand year, and they had, still people suffering with COVID and those sorts of things, and all the chaos that goes with that, Graeme. And yet what they said was we're really proud of how everyone worked so hard despite everything that was going on, and also despite a lot of the personal things that were going on with people. Now, the leaders to say that, Graeme, means they actually knew about the personal issues, and they were consciously trying to create a safe haven within the organisation that, despite all that stuff and chaos that might be going on in your life, despite some of the chaos going in here with trying to deliver to orders, etc., we actually care about you, and as a result, you're going to want to be here.
Yeah, and I think that's such a wonderful culture where people do feel genuine care and support from those around us. And let's face it, we spend more time at work than with our family in terms of waking hours. And so if you have a place like that where, you support each other, you have each other's back, you enjoy working together, it's gold. It really is. And one of the studies that I always quote to really illustrate that this isn't just theory is Gallup have been researching engagement, discretionary effort for about 40 years, and they've got it down to just 12 questions, which predict whether someone is engaged and is giving discretionary effort. And one of those statements is, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. And the more people in an organization that strongly agree with that, the higher the profit, the higher the productivity, the longer people stay there, and the higher the customer service level. It's been asked 15 million times, 135 countries. It's ironclad. And, often in my, keynotes or workshops, I ask people to reflect on a great team they've been part of. And it could be where they are now or a previous company or a sports team or when they worked at McDonald's. And I give people about 9 options. But in 95% of the cases, the top 3 things nominated are we had each other's back, we enjoyed working together, and we cared about each other. And that was the nucleus of, great teams that have produced great things. And I'm sure you've experienced that in your work as well, Gary.
And I guess this is the really important point, because we understand the enjoyment, we understand that we're achieving together, we've got each other's back, and I feel like someone cares about me. Interestingly, as simple as those things sound, and actually they are simple, and I think this is part of the challenge, Graeme, is that in our work, we are aware of just how simple they are, but there's a lot of people walking around that hopefully are engaging and either watching or listening into our conversation today, where it's like, well, how do I actually do it? How do I show someone I care in the workplace? And you have a wealth of experience with so many CEOs in particular, and knowledge and organizations that you work with. So what are some simple examples that you know through your work and the evidence that this is how someone knows that the leader cares about them?
One of the big things is it's not what they say, it's how they listen. And, they listen to understand, and they listen with empathy. One of the people I did interview on the Caring CEO is Bob Chapman, and he's the author of a book called Everybody Matters, and an incredibly successful, you got it there, good one, incredible successful company, and it's in manufacturing in the US, but they've grown since he took over from $20 million to being a $1 billion organization. And one of the biggest things that he talks about is the importance of being able to listen with empathy. So much so that that's part of their core competency that they try to instill and embed across the organization. And it doesn't just have benefits for the workplace, it also has benefits for their private lives as well. If you listen to your partner or spouse or child or friend with empathy, it does truly show that you care. The other thing I think that is best illustrated by Mike Schneider, who's the CEO of Bunnings.
Yes.
He oversees whatever it is, 500 stores and 60,000 people, but he leads his life and his leadership style by the 4 H's. And his 4 H's are honest, humble, helpful, and happy. And I think it's the real humility that he brings to that. You think of it, there's 60,000 people, but when people ask him what he does, he says, I work for Bunnings.
Yes.
And then they ask, which store? Which store it is? And but he's so matter of fact like that, so much so that within Bunnings, everyone is just referred to as a team member. It doesn't matter whether you're the CEO or someone on the floor. You are a team member. And in the really tough times in the pandemic, of course, many of the retailers had to be open, and there was lots and lots of challenges. And Mike was very proactive about, spreading a message of well-being, looking after ourselves, self-care. And he interviewed a number of people that was then broadcast to all their employees. And I was actually one of those people that he interviewed. But on one of them, there was some wag, a young guy in the Central Coast of New South Wales, that says, I reckon this is recorded, Mike. If it's not, I want you to do 10 push-ups. Now, just imagine asking that in a number of other organisations, what the possibility of that happening, and say none. And so, but Mike said, okay, I'll do that, but I'll only do it if it's hashtag challenge accepted, if everyone else commits to do 10 push-ups. So he did the 10 push-ups, and then on the follow-up email, he said, I want you to see evidence of this happening in every store in Australia. And one of the stores in WA actually broke the Guinness Book of Records for the most people to do 10 push-ups. They had not just their employees involved, but they had their customers involved as well.
That's great.
And you really think about that, the connection, the belonging that creates, where everyone's joining this challenge around Australia. So listening is really important, but also, that humility, that vulnerability. And just as another example, Mike shared that when Bunnings expanded into the UK and Ireland, they put a lot into it and hoped it was going to be a big success. And for whatever reason, it wasn't. It was a different market, and they missed the mark. And he spoke very honestly about that being a really, really tough time for him, and needing to get the help of a mindset coach. And so he'd say, I've got a coach for my business, I've got a coach for my running, and I've got a coach for my mindset. And I just encourage anyone that is, struggling with unhelpful thoughts and stuff to seek some help, because, that's the fastest way to turn it around. And so it normalizes help seeking as well. And, just really creates a culture. And Bunnings are the number one most trusted corporate brands in Australia. And I think that his lifestyle, his 4Hs, contribute to that, going across the organisation.
Yes, and modelling, as you say, help seeking. And look, it's not that this interview is about Yes for Success, my most recent book, but that's about people actually creating some clarity around their own vision and how to bring it to life. And I think most people understand it's useful to have a vision, but they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so I help them actually cultivate whatever their unique answer is. And I'm deliberately trying to reconnect people with the extraordinary person that they were born. And anyone that's got children, I've got 5 of them, when you hold that child for the first time, they're extraordinary. They're born extraordinary, which means I'm so passionate. Everyone in the whole world was born extraordinary. But for a lot of folk, even by the time they're a young child, they already don't believe that. And certainly by the time they're an adult, they don't believe it. And so help seeking becomes something that they're not doing. And yet it's so important. I mean, you're probably aware with these statistics too, is, CEOs are reading on average 60 books a year. The average employee reads less than 1.
Yeah.
And that's probably a romance novel if they are. And that's a fact, right? It's sort of funny, but on one level, it's like they're not actually, there's so much self-help material out there. Your 5 books, for example, I've published 3. There's a lot of material, but a lot of folk aren't taking, I guess, responsibility for themselves. And we want to catalyze, hey, it's okay. It's okay to invest in yourself. It's okay to go and get a coach, a mindset coach. People might say, oh, well, the CEOs can afford it, I can't. Well, there's plenty of options out there, and we just want to encourage people, because what my audience might not know is your backstory, Graeme, and why you're so passionate about this space. Do you want to just share briefly from where you went as a high-flying corporate in marketing to what you do today? And I mean, it's been a long time now, but there's a very powerful story behind that.
Yeah, sure. I've had episodes of depression a number of times in my career, but going back to, the early 2000s, I was with Carney, a management consulting company, and at that stage they had like a headhunting division, and I was one of the leaders of that division. And that was the years when the tech crash happened, and we were doing a lot of work in that space. and then it just turned off like a tap. Suddenly no one was recruiting. There was just no expansion whatsoever. And I went through a really bad episode of depression. I was trying to lead a team and be positive and buoyant and all this sort of space, and having a mask on each day. And eventually it just caught up with me. I just couldn't do it anymore. And it began very serious, 5-year episode of depression where I lost my job and my marriage broke down, and I had to go and live with my parents. And, during that period, I was really 100% convinced that I would never get better. And when you feel that sense of hopelessness, you do, insane things. And, one of the things I did was try to take my own life. And I can look back now and say that I was insane when I made that decision. It seemed rational at the time because I thought I would never get better. And you think that, you're a burden on your loved ones, so they're better off without you. And I just can't stress how much that is wrong. Now that I've, spoken to lots and lots of people that have tragically lost someone to suicide. So, that was the backstory. And then I began to write a series of books in Back from the Brink, where I not only interviewed some well-known and everyday people who'd been through some really tough times, but I also surveyed over 4,000 people to find out what worked best in their recovery. And that really, served as a framework and a guide I could share with other people.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to tap into your resources later, because all 5 of your books are really powerful, and they're a great starting point for people if they, haven't really ventured in this place, particularly if they are feeling in a space where they can't ask for help. And I recently came across a story about a suicide survivor, meaning it thankfully failed. They weren't successful, like your own event. And this person was jumping off a bridge or letting themselves. They're actually hanging off a bridge, and they let themselves go. And their self-report was the moment they let go of that bridge and they started to fall, they regretted it. Now they got to live to tell that story.
Yeah.
And for those folk that may have experienced the unfortunate tragedy of suicide and the anger and the pain that comes with that, and the people get very upset with the people that did that, and that's completely understandable with that form of grief. But it is possible for nearly every single one of them that there was a moment when they realised, if they got to realise what they were doing, that it actually was a form of insanity, as you said earlier, and that it was not something. And I just shared with Graeme, folks, just a few minutes before the show, that just only 2 evenings ago, this tragedy impacted my broader family. I have a niece, an adult niece, and her partner committed suicide, and it's just the ripple effect of that into my own family is extraordinary. It's just a very, very sad, tragic event. A 29-year-old male who actually is a father of 2 daughters to he's divorced, but those young children are going to grow up without their young father, and that's just very sad. And certainly we don't hold any blame or anything like that, but this is a real issue. And while workplaces are not responsible for that, in by and large, I mean, there are some toxic cultures that can contribute. As Graeme, you mentioned earlier, one of the things about the workplace is the reality is that's where people are spending the majority of their waking hours. That is one of the reasons why what can go on in the workplace, what leaders can do in a workplace around care, could actually be the factor that keeps someone alive. And you might not even always know.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And, even another question that Gallup Q12 is that I have a best friend at work. And,
Yes.
You think, oh, that's not relevant. You got friends outside of work. But it has it's a huge predictor, again, to engagement and discretionary effort. If you feel you have, a really good friend at work that you can confide in. And it just makes sense. We spend a lot of time there, and to connect properly, have that social connection really counts for a lot. And in broader well-being research that Gallup did, they looked at, I think there was 5 different elements of well-being. They looked at social, emotional, physical, mental, and career well-being, and financial well-being. There's 5. So
Yes.
they actually found that the if your career well-being was good, that was the best predictor for overall well-being. It was even more significant than things like physical well-being. But having
Yes.
that social connection at work was that good. And you may also be familiar with the Harvard Grant study, the longest well-being study ever done, and it showed that the best predictor of a long life, happy life, long sex life, for affluent life was having caring and supportive relationships around you.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether they're in work or at home, that they still count. So, yeah, making time to invest in those relationships is really good for our own well-being, but it also is for a team or an organization, to have strong support.
You're 100% right about. I mean, ultimately, we're a social creature, and belonging, connection. We can never underestimate it. And yes, we proved during COVID that we can work from home. And I know a lot of organisations, particularly here in Australia, are still really struggling with this issue. And a lot of employees have got comfortable working from home, but there is a degree to which that's not healthy. And as much as a lot of employees are still resisting getting more into the workplace, and it's far better if it's not mandated, but at the same time, there's no point going to the workplace on a day when no one else is there. So there's a degree of which we need to sort of work together and go, well, what are the days when as many of us as possible will be there, because we
Mm.
need that connection. What are your thoughts on that particular topic, and what if people are seeking your advice, Graham, what sort of direction are you giving them based on the research that you're exposed to?
I think it's a big mistake to mandate you've got to work in the office. I really do, because I do believe went through that trauma of COVID for a reason, and that was to learn about flexibility.
Yes.
But I think the best people to decide what the work policy is are the team members.
Mm.
And if they decide, well, let's go in, for these 2 days a week when we can all be together, we can brainstorm, we can, go for a coffee together, we can, have a drink after work or whatever. And I think if team decides that, it means that they're committed to it. They encourage others to come into it, and it works. And the I once interviewed a futurist, and he talked about hybrid 2.0, and hybrid 2.0 was talking about not where you work but how you work,
Yes.
and having team input to how you work, and that, in his experience, provided the greatest engagement. I would say there's no hard and fast rule that, in some places like retail, you have to be there. There's no choice.
Yeah.
But if an office type situation, I do think it's a mistake to insist on 5 days a week, because what that implicitly says is you don't trust people.
Yes.
You believe that if they're not here, you can see them, they're going to take time off. And people should be measured really by what they produce, the outcomes they produce, rather than the hours or where they work. And, you can have people that can work for 2 days and achieve more than others in 5 days. So, I think it should be about outcomes and not hours worked.
It's an interesting scenario for organisations where they have the combination of on the floor. So let's take a car panel shop
Mm.
that's repairing cars. So all of the panel beaters and spray painters, and they clearly can't work from it. They have to be there. And then you've got all the office space staff who can potentially be answering phones and doing all sorts of things from the office. But those two groups working together and the people knowing each other does matter too.
Mm. It really does.
And and so this group of people, obviously flexibility and work from home's a doable possibility. These people, it's just not.
Mm.
There's other forms of flexibility that the employer. So what I'm interestingly in my work, like that, I've got more and more clients in that space that are really struggling because these folk are saying, well, hold on, we don't get anything like what they get. I'd love to be able to do my spray painting for home, but I know that's not practical.
Mm,
But we've had these new people come in. I don't even know who they are.
mm,
And I
mm.
see that as an issue. Like organisations, there is a degree to which, hold on, we have to find the way that you do get into the office because there are human relationships that need and connections that need to be built, which will make your work from home better.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very important that cross team, cross division interaction and collaboration is very, very important. Less about hierarchical, more about what's sometimes called lattice work, lattice, combination.
Yeah, yeah.
And I read some work in a McKinsey study about a group that actually did that, and not only do people get permission to go across divisions or across teams, they also get permission to talk with the general managers or leaders in those other divisions, particularly
Yes.
about an idea, a new product they might have in mind. And there's such health in that, in marketing talking with production or sales talking with production and marketing, and just being aware of these developments together and being aware of what could be hindrances or challenges. Like marketing, I used to be marketing loves bright, shiny things, but production will tell you, well, we can't do it. We can't do it. And that's got to be part of the discussion, of course, and that's where that lattice work works. But
Yes.
likewise, marketing can also challenge and say, well, what would we need to do to make it happen?
Yes.
And to
Exactly.
listen and to, but ultimately that's how that cross team collaboration is just as important as the divisional collaboration.
See, it's interesting what you've just said there, Graham, is how earlier we were talking about effectively the number one indicator of whether I'm engaged or not is do I believe my leader cares for me and that I've got friends as colleagues, etc. Interestingly, in a lot of the service excellence work that I've done over time, one of the key indicators there for organisational performance at a team level is do, do the teams care enough about each other
Mm,
that they can handle providing feedback to each other
mm, mm,
in a manner that the feedback is received and considered for what it actually is, and that we're not picking at each other.
yeah,
And it's literally the degree to which the teams care across functions, across that lattice function for each other will be a great determinant with that. Do I feel like I'm cared for? If you've got those two happening, and it's interesting, a lot of organisations, we're great at feedback, and I say, well, can operations handle when marketing come to them with feedback, and can marketing handle when operations come to them with some feedback?
yeah.
Give me an example of how you handle that and welcome it. And they're like, they haven't got them.
And that's sometimes termed psychological safety, which has become an increasingly valuable term. And Google and other very innovative teams have this psychological safety, and that's where people can express reservations. They can challenge ideas if they don't think they make sense. But if there's psychological safety, it's not an us versus them. It's just really a truth-seeking exercise,
Yes.
and trying to understand, what is the minimum lovable product that we can put together to make that happen. And there's uh, a hedge fund billionaire. I'm just can't think of his name now, but he has this philosophy: is we should strive to have a culture where the best ideas win. And
Yes.
and what that means is that we encourage people to make suggestions. We encourage people to try things, and if they don't work out, we work out what went wrong and what we can learn from it. And Ray Dalio, that's his name, Ray Dalio.
Yeah.
And so what he says is that, have a culture where it's okay to make mistakes, but
Yes.
unacceptable not to learn from them. And I like that extra proviso because that's about learning and moving forward. And probably one of the greatest global experts in psychological safety is Professor Amy Edmondson from Harvard.
Yes.
And I loved when I interviewed on the Caring CEO. I
Yes.
asked her, what lessons she would share with her 18-year-old self if she could go back and talk to that person. And she said that I often felt stressed during my career, and I wish I would have told myself, rather than be stressed, ask myself, what do I need to learn
Mhm.
to address this issue? And isn't that a wonderful mindset? And
Yes. Oh,
it's a learning mindset, and particularly in this really fast, uncertain, quickly changing environment, we all need to be in a learning mindset.
and look, we haven't mentioned AI and the impact that that's already having in the workplace. And recently, I interviewed an AI expert here in Australia called Dave King, and one of the things he said was that if a human being has a learning mindset and is happy to engage through their learning with AI, a human and AI will beat AI or a human on their own every
Mm,
day of the week. But
mm,
it has to start with the human. The best protection us humans, if anyone's listening, they're worried about the future of their job and what AI is going to mean, and they've heard a horror story here and a horror story there, is be a learner. Be
mm,
a learner. Learn how can you engage and learn with to use AI to your advantage in your role or your future role. That is the best protection, but it starts with you being a learner. And you're familiar, obviously, with Gary Ridge and WD-40 and learning moments, and it's exactly the same
mm,
sort of concept as Ray's with what did we learn, and we do not tolerate not learning.
mm, mm,
It's very, very powerful. And so, one of the challenges, just to wrap up here, is I'm not sure why this has happened, and I suspect it's because of a lot of people's experience at school, including university, actually wasn't a great learning experience. They got through, but it wasn't necessarily a great learning experience, and so a lot of people have literally raised the white flag on their learning.
mm,
And one of my aspirations with my life is to try to re-spark that and get people back in control of their learning. So much
mm,
so that even if you're working for a great corporate, it has a great, it's sensational corporate development programs that you can access. If your mindset is I'm in control of my learning, then you'll always see them as a bonus.
mm, mm,
And so if it's not there one day, you will still be proactive with your learning no matter what. With whatever resources you've got available to you, you'll still be a proactive learner. And in that situation, you'll learn far more from those programs too. Versus, I will learn if you give it to me,
mm, mm.
because that secondary mindset, I don't believe anyone with that mindset actually learns as much as they could when they don't own it.
Yeah, and I think it is underpinned by what you talked about earlier, vision or purpose. But if you can identify that vision or purpose and learn things that are relevant to that, it sort of turbocharges it because you're learning how to be more effective in delivering your vision or purpose. And it is deciding what's going to be relevant for me. And I've also spoken to a couple of real experts in the AI space, and like you, they said that working with it makes you much more effective, and it's all about the prompts you give it.
Yes, yes,
um, you know, you can feed to it, 2,000 words in my language, and from previous articles I've written, and you say, write an article about the 5 best ways to build team belonging, and have a call to action at the end, and include, some key tags and key words, and it does it. And if it's not quite right, you can say, well, can you come up with 5 more influential headings for the article? And it does it straight away.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
it is, as you say, if we are comfortable driving it and interacting with this resource, it can take things to a whole new level.
Oh, and look, I mean, I use it all the time.
Mm,
It's now it's my research assistant. So
mm,
all of the various Chat GPTs that are available now, they're a whole bunch of research assistants for me. And I've learned because I've gone and done the courses and things that I would rarely write a prompt that's less than 600 words. They're often even 1,000 words. My prompts.
exactly,
The
exactly.
quality of the output and the quality of the conversation. That's another thing I learned. I'm actually in conversation with this machine
Yeah,
to help leverage its responses for me to help me. But what it's done is it's compressed time,
yeah, yeah.
and that's a very like all of us are too busy. So if we can compress time and these tools can help, it's going to be wonderful. So I believe it'll be wonderful. I believe it will be also terrible for people that choose not to learn.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I can see that. I think that time and again with technology that's been proven. Um, how many episodes into the Caring CEO podcast are you now, Graham?
59.
59.
Yeah,
Okay. Honestly, that is an unbelievable resource for folk that, again, might not believe it is possible to create cultures of care. I know Graham goes and has interviews with people that are doing it, rolling their sleeves up. The Bob Chapman interview is brilliant to learn what Bob has done. And again, taken that company from once he had the realization that care mattered at that wedding that he was at in 1997, I think it was,
yeah,
friend's child's wedding. The business was about $200 million at the time. It's now a multi-billion dollar business with over 12,000 employees across multiple countries. It's an extraordinary story. And the fact that they continue to acquire organizations and then bring them into the fold of care, and it just success after success after success from the employee stories themselves. That's just one example of the many that Graham's got on the Caring CEO podcast, folks. So absolutely, please go and tune into that. What would be some of the other best ways that folk can reach out to you and access any of your 5 books as well, Graham?
yeah. Well, probably, like you, Gary, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that's always a good way to connect and see what I'm up to. And our paths regularly cross on that because we're, lots of similar beliefs and motivations. So that's always a great place. Secondly, for my speaking and workshops, it's graemecowan.com.au. And then for the simple scalable learning, it's a company I co-founded with Brendan Carter, which is called WeCare365, and it's wecare365.com.au. And there's some great resources on both sites, but with the WeCare one, there's downloadable posters about how best to support a teammate in distress. And it
Yes.
says teammate, but it also applies just as much to our family and friends as well. And then we've also got a really helpful guide there on how to build a mentally healthy culture checklist and to think about all the elements to not just to have a launch, but then have momentum in the years afterwards sort of thing. So that's good. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, please just feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. I respond pretty quickly. So yeah, very happy to engage that way.
And I can vouch for that because that's how we've communicated over time. Also, Graham's a LinkedIn top voice, and that's not a simple badge to get. So he's got great influence on LinkedIn, so definitely check it out. And with wecare365.com.au too, folks, think of the number 365
Mm,
and we care in front of that.
mm,
You know, everyone knows what 365 represents.
mm,
It's a year, every
mm.
day of the year. And it's because every day of the year caring matters. And Graham is passionate about that. Every ounce of his being is about enabling more people to care. And those resources, I can also vouch for them because I have them myself. Absolutely excellent resources. Please, folks, go to wecare.com.au to check them out. Graham, I want to really thank you for giving up your precious time to speak with me on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast.
Absolute pleasure, Gary. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you very much. And once again, folks, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life, Harmony and Fulfillment. It is a resource to help you clarify your vision and also, more importantly even, the steps that you can take for your unique definition of success so you can go and create it. It debuted at number 6 on Amazon Kindle, and just last weekend, which will be a little bit away from now once you get to see this episode, but we debuted at number 19 on Audible as well. So if you like the sound of my voice, you'll get to hear me there. I was able to persuade the producer to let me ad-lib a bit as well to the content, given 5 months had already passed from the time I finished actually writing to publication, which was a great experience to do. So please check that out. And again, folks, we look forward to you joining us next time on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. Bye.